me one reason that they wouldn't have kept the secure military airbase in Bagram and evacuate all of our people first? Can you give me one reason?
The only deaths in the American withdrawal from Afghanistan were from a bombing by a random splinter Islamist group that the Taliban's actually fighting. That sucked that that bombing happened and those people died. But when you withdraw from a country very quickly, it is really dangerous, and it is remarkable. The Taliban killed 0 Americans on the way out. That astonished me. I assumed that if we did pull out, it would be like in Vietnam, with the Taliban were like shooting at us on the way out, shooting at the helicopters, you know, just like killing American servicemen on the way out, because we did lose a bunch of American servicemen on the way out of Vietnam. Yeah, there was that bombing, but the Taliban themselves killed 0 Americans on the way out. That's impressive. I'm impressed. And Afghanistan was not a thing that we should have stayed in forever. The idea of a forever war was really stupid. And Trump refused to get us out because he knew it would be a PR hit. And Obama refused to get out, even though Obama pulled out most of our troops after the death of bin Laden. He refused to pull out all of our troops because he knew he would take a PR hit. Biden is just like, fuck it. I'm going to take the PR hit. I'm going to do it. Because keeping our army in that country to babysit those people and to, you know, forever was not a viable option. And I was against that. We did what we came to do. We got bin Laden. We killed the Al-Qaeda guys. We even killed the specific Taliban guys who had harbored them and who had been in charge, like Mullah Omar. I'm old enough to remember. Killed him. We killed a bunch of those guys. And you know what? Afghanistan is a crappy country where, you know, it has no good economy, and we can't just give it one. It's this insanely violent, backwards country. Our army sitting around, you know, 14,000 American troops or whatever, sitting around cannot babysit that country into becoming like we're not going to make it become Japan. We're not going to make it become Germany. We're not going to make it become like a liberal democracy. And whoever thought that we should keep our like troops there forever and ever and ever and ever and ever was wrong. I know there's those people out there. They're neocons. They're wrong. We did what we came to do when we got out. That was the right thing to do. Could we have handled the refugee situation better by taking in those translators and those people who worked for us? Yes. But why didn't Biden do that? Is it because he's just a dick? No. It's because MAGA people are like, oh my God, Muslims, you know, oh my God, you're going to let all those people in. It was immigration restriction, pressure from Republicans not wanting, you know, that kept Biden from actually taking in those people. It wasn't just because Biden's like, oh, I hate translators. Screw you guys. No. Anyway, that frustrated me, and that was the biggest problem with our pullout is that we didn't take all those people immediately who worked for us. We did betray many of them. We took some of them later.
Just
anyway, there's my thesis about Afghanistan.
Great. I'm going to enforce stricter time limits since you got to go in 10 minutes. I want to make sure there's at least some.
I do.
So you got 2 minutes. He's had 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes,
Okay.
Rob. Go.
All right, so I agree that we should have pulled out. Don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is the way that we pulled out. It was a disaster. They closed down Bagram Air Base, a secure air base, and then relied on an air base that was controlled by the Taliban. The Taliban went into Bagram Air Base, freed ISIS, who then bombed our U.S. soldiers, killing 13 of them and civilians. Why would we rely on the very enemy that we had been fighting for 20 years to protect us, particularly when we knew that they already released ISIS? Then what happened, because Joe Biden had egg on his face, was he bombed ISIS-K, which was really just a translator and a bunch of kids. He did that to try to change the news cycle and seem like a tough guy because he showed his fecklessness and weakness. There were people hanging off the engines of planes trying to leave. Other disasters that occurred during this. We left $7 billion worth of weapons and equipment that now has armed our enemy, the Taliban, and which they're using now to further enslave their own people, particularly people that Democrats should care about, such as LGBT and women people. 78,000 Afghan allies left behind. We also saw 5,000 to 9,000 Americans left behind. We did not properly vet the Afghan refugees, and there's been a Republican House committee that showed how the OIG report showed how none of the proper vetting procedures were used. Lastly, we now find out just from April, I'll quote from CNN, Hours of closed-door testimony from 3 top State Department officials shed new light in the unprecedented situations of the final day of Afghanistan. 3 officials, John Bass, Jim DeHart, and Jane Howe, who were all plucked from unrelated assignments and rushed into Afghanistan in the hours after Kabul fell due to the Taliban, due to their experience. When you listen to these 3 officials and you read the article, they're basically told, we were given no forewarning. There was no plan. They just threw us in there and said, okay, do your best. Try to get people out. I'm sorry, I don't think it's a success that as many as 9,000 Americans were left behind. I'm sorry, I don't think it's a success that children got bombed by the U.S. government. I don't think it's a success that over 70,000 Afghans that helped us fight in that war were left. And I don't think it's a success that we left $7 billion of military equipment to now arm a country or a group that we were fighting for 20 years to make them one of the most powerful militaries in the area. We'll be told 10 years from now that we have to go back to fight terrorists because all of a sudden they mysteriously got these weapons and trainings and things like that we didn't know about. So I was shocked to see in your blog post that you said, I agree with you that we should pull out, but you said you thought it was relatively a success. It was one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in my lifetime, and it sent a signal of weakness that's probably largely responsible for why we see Russia and Chinese aggression today.
Okay, and with that, let's get into it, gang. Go ahead. We have limited time, remember. So, yeah.
Why wouldn't they keep
Go ahead. It's back and forth.
Can you give me one reason that they wouldn't have kept the secure military airbase in Bagram and evacuate all of our people first? Can you give me one reason?
The Taliban didn't even kill anybody of our people.
They freed ISIS, who did.
Listen. Okay, no. Look. You're like, oh, we gave this base to the Taliban. The Taliban used it to kill precisely 0 of our people. About those refugees, if we had let in 78,000 Afghans who worked for us, I would bet so much money, and I wish there were a way to settle this bet. I wish there were a way to see this. I would bet so much money that you'd be howling your head off saying, look at all these people we're letting in. Do we vet them? No. All these Muslims? Look, all these people, how are we letting these all in? You know, like it's open borders season. Republicans, conservatives, MAGA people would just be screeching their heads off if we'd let those people in. It's easy to say, oh, we should have let those guys in. I think we should have let those guys in. I honestly think we should have let those guys in. I'm sure that everyone in MAGA would be screeching their heads off if we let 78,000 Muslim Afghan guys right into our country.
Do you hear them screeching now? That's what happened. So how loud are they screeching? Because what happened was we did take 70,000 something Afghans. We just didn't vet them. See, the proper procedure would have been to have been planning months ahead and make sure that we had a secure airbase secured by our military, that the Taliban wasn't attacking, to get the people that we could vet that legitimately worked with the United States. If you have to ask me, Rob, would you rather have 70,000 people that the military vetted for 2 months that actually actively worked with our military in fighting Afghanistan, have them come to the United States, or 70,000 random Afghanis who we did no vetting? I guarantee you I wouldn't have been screeching as loud. I guarantee I would have said, yes, if those people actually fought with our armed services and helped and it was vetted and proved so, they deserve to be able to come here. I can't
claim that the vetting was bad or faulty, or like Biden's vetting process was bullshit and therefore they're just really unvetted.
You could make that claim, but you could make that claim if the vetting had been done properly. It wouldn't have been an argument that been had. If the vetting wouldn't have been properly, perhaps that's an argument I would have had. But that hypothetical situation's irrelevant in the world where Biden's team didn't plan according to people in his own State Department. They gave up a secure airbase. They left behind 5,000 to 9,000 Americans. They left behind 70,000 people that were working with
5,000 to 9,000 Americans. You think they're dead or in Taliban prison?
I have no idea. Ask the State Department. It was what the Inspector General came up with.
No, if we would be hearing about if the Taliban had taken thousands of American prisoners. It's fantasy. This is a fantasy extended universe.
So the IG report's incorrect.
There are not 5,000 to 9,000 Americans stuck in Afghanistan. I'll bet you all the money in the world. No, that is fantasy.
So okay.
Fantasy.
On that, no.
The Wheel of Time. That's Game of Thrones. That's fantasy.
How many are left behind?
Hold on. Hey, we got a hard out